Oscar winner Rami Malek returns to the big screen in a leading role for the first time in a few years. Let's talk about the spy thriller, The Amateur. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my movie review for The Amateur. This is in theaters right now, and it's based on a book from 1981, which already was made into a movie that same year with Christopher Plummer. Never heard of it. Of course, we know Christopher Plummer, but didn't know about that movie. But this, I have to imagine, is quite a different telling of the story because most of the technology used in the movie didn't even exist in the 80s. So, I would be intrigued to go look at that. But anyway, this is also Rami Malek's return to, being at the top of the marquee. He has had, some supporting roles. He was in Oppenheimer, of course, huge cast in there. He was part of the ensemble of Amsterdam a few years ago. He was the villain in No Time to Die, but obviously Daniel Craig at the top of the call sheet there. So this is really, in years, Rami Malek's first time as the lead. We'll talk about all this here in just a moment. But first, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are new to Dan Reviews It, thank you for finding this video. We do movie and TV reviews here on the channel, and I post just about every day. So please consider subscribing, click that notification bell, and you can get the alerts there of all my video drops. But if you are a subscriber already, thank you so much for that. Love when you guys return and check out my stuff. And of course, you could like this video, comment below. That stuff helps the channel out with the YouTube algorithm. So I certainly appreciate it. All right. So Rami Malek plays a CIA cryptographer. And in the opening scene, we see him at home with his wife, played by Rachel Brosnahan, and she's, just lovely as always. She's on her way to London for business, and she urges him to come with her. And we find out a little bit later in the movie that he has a fear of flying. But I don't know if I guess she knows that because he's building a Cessna in his garage. And I guess the premise there is if he builds it himself with his big brain, then he trusts it a little more, I guess. But anyway, so they go their separate ways. And early on in the film, it turns out she is killed while she's in London. And Rami Malek, as Charlie, decides, you know what? This can't stand, and I will not let the CIA handle it in their own way. I'm going to go vigilante. I'm going to do it myself. And so he gets some training from Lawrence Fishburne's character, who becomes his mentor, but tells him, look, Charlie, you're not a killer. He's teaching him the basics from like how to hold a gun and how to shoot it. All of the combat basics. And he's like, this is not going to work out for you. I don't give you a high chance of survival. You're not a killer. And so Charlie ends up, escaping from there and going out on his own anyway and using his big brain to, try and lure these people in, trap them, whatever, without using, hand-to-hand combat, guns, all of that stuff. He's just using his smarts in the computer realm and whatnot. So it's interesting because he is certainly not Ethan Hunt. He's not Jason Bourne. He's not James Bond, to bring it back there. So this is interesting as a spy thriller because, we've seen movies like this where we're utilizing, the lead's big brain or whatever. But usually there's some component of, firearms, hand-to-hand combat, some sort of fight. This is more, let's set some traps for these people, corner them, and then find out how to get to the person above them until I can get to the biggest bad of them all and hopefully take him down. And I think Rami Malek was the right choice for the role. He has this interesting look about him. He plays this sort of, I don't want to call him like a fraidy cat, but yeah, he's like, scared to fly. He is, stuck in his little basement cubicle trying to figure out, these codes and everything that he's cracking. He is an office worker for all intents and purposes. And at the beginning, we kind of see, oh, okay, he doesn't want to go to London because he's too busy in his work. And then his wife calls him while he's at work. He says, hey, I'm really onto something. I got to go. I'll talk to you later. Love you. Goodbye. But as soon as we learn that she's been killed, he springs into action. He's like, oh no, this is not going to stand. Let's do this. But realizing that he can't do it the traditional way, with gunplay and whatever. Opens up, I think, the story to a lot more opportunities. So I like that. This was directed by James Hawkes, and this is only his second feature film. He's done a lot of television work, mostly in England. In fact, he worked on one of the Doctor Who, reboots or whatever in the mid 2000s. But this is only his second feature, and while it doesn't necessarily open up the genre to anything necessarily new, I do think that there's some close knit action sequences there. Never once did I wonder what was happening with the action. I think that's a big problem directors make sometimes with action movies, where they're too close to the action, and so you can't even tell what's going on. Because there's not a lot of that type of combat in this movie, I think it allowed us as the audience to experience it more through Charlie's eyes than I think some movies like this. So I liked that part of it. But the plot, I think, leaves a bit to be desired. The general plot's fine. As I keep saying, I like that he has to use his brain and the technology and all this stuff. But there are so many plot holes in this movie where you're just like, all right, A, how did that even happen? B, that wouldn't happen. C, when there's a scene where the people are shooting at him, and they're the worst shots of all time, and you're like, these people are with the government, they're in the CIA, what are we doing? Because obviously he goes rogue, so the CIA not too happy about it. But you have a good cast here. Julianne Nicholson is the CIA director, and she's just coming off of a great TV show, Paradise, that I have to do a review for. But you have as his direct boss, Holt McElhenney. Not sure if that's how you pronounce it, but he's been in a ton of things too. Recently, he was the father in The Iron Claw. You have John Barenthal, Michael Stuhlbarg. I mentioned Rachel Brosnahan plays the wife. It's an interesting cast. I think Rami Malek was the right choice though for this role. I go kind of back and forth on his performances. Sometimes I think he's maybe not that great, and then other times I'm kind of blown away. This is not either of those specifically, but it's more on the positive side for sure. I think he was the right actor, the right choice to play this role. So look, overall, yes, this is definitely a positive grade. I teeter here, between a B and a B minus. I think there's so many plot holes though. I saw it with a friend, and afterwards we were just like, okay, did that make sense? Or why did that happen? Or when did and we just had so many questions that didn't have answers. So I didn't love that, but I will say, this is definitely, on a higher echelon than, say a streaming action movie or something like that. And Rami Malek does bring, some heft to this role. So I will leave The Amateur. I'll give it a B. Let's give it the benefit of the doubt here. Even with all those plot holes, I think it's a pretty fun ride. All right. Thank you for watching Dan Reviews It, and we'll see you next time. Bye.